Hi guys, welcome to Vintage Van Life. Now in the last episode I said that my gearbox was broken and it was my fault, but I didn't actually tell you what I did to break it. So back when I was living in Pembrokeshire over the summer in South Wales, the van's distributor broke down whilst I was driving about a mile away from where I was living at the time. And a friend of mine towed me back to the field where I was keeping this camper and restoring it. And where it ended up, it was parked on a slant, so it was leaning sideways. So when I tried to sleep in the bed, this would happen quite a lot. And you can imagine that was really annoying. So I bought some plastic chocks to level the vehicle off. So on the left hand side here, the near side by British terms, under the rear and front wheel, I put the chocks under it and I put the gearbox in first gear and I turned the crank handle to get it to creep up the chocks. Now this was fine, except once it was at the top, as soon as I let go of the crank handle, it started inching its way back down the chocks. And I was on my own at the time, so I had no one to help me. So I ran through the side entrance here with the intention of grabbing the handbrake and pulling it on. Now the handbrake and the gear stick are right next to each other. And in the split second I got it wrong and I grabbed the gear stick accidentally instead of the handbrake. So I pulled it out of first, into neutral and into second, and that was as quick as this, like that, really quick. And as it went from first to neutral, the whole weight of the vehicle rolled it backwards and then it got jammed in second gear. But we actually discovered what the problem was. Here is my gearbox, painted in British racing green cylinder block paint, make it look all nice and pretty again, and also a chance to get rid of all that horrible oil and grease that was on the outside. This gearbox weighs an absolute ton. I can just about lift it on my own. So what I'm going to do is put it into a wheelbarrow and move it across to the van and then try and figure out how to get it back in the vehicle. The gearbox is now in the wheelbarrow and I'll explain what was wrong. It was actually the end of the gear selector here. So let me just explain what this does on the gearbox itself. Okay, if you imagine the end of this screwdriver is the gear selector, what it does is it sits inside this area here. So when you're in neutral and you're wobbling the gear stick, it's essentially going like that inside this area. And when you engage a gear, it will move these components, there's three of them, 1, 2, 3. It will move them forward and backwards depending on what gear you want. So, for example, the middle one is second and first, and then you've got third and fourth over here, and then this one here selects reverse. Now let me show you how it was getting stuck. What I've done here is I've selected second gear, so the central column has been pushed forwards. So if you imagine the end of the gear selector normally sits here, when the vehicle rolled backwards off the chocks and I accidentally forced it into second, the gear selector actually fit through the gap here and ended up sitting over here instead of here. So when I tried to push it back to get neutral, essentially trying to get it to do that, instead it was pushing against here, which is not designed to move back. This is actually the reverse one. So it got jammed like that, and that's why I couldn't get it out of second gear. The reason it was able to fit through the gap wasn't just because of the weight of the vehicle moving backwards and forcing it into second. The end of this was very chewed up and very worn out for 50, 60 odd years of use and had become quite thin. So it's been welded to thicken it out, hopefully to represent how it would have looked originally back in the 50s. Now that the end of the gear selector is thicker, it can't fit through that gap, so hopefully it's problem solved. My friends at P50 Cars, they offered to have a look at the gearbox, so I took it up to them, and after a lot of time fiddling about with it, finally spotting the gear selector being at a funny position, figured out what the problem was. They welded it, and let's just put it back in and hope for the best. Well, it's been a very long day. The sun is beginning to set. I have literally been working on that gearbox all day. It was very tough, There are times where I wanted to give up, but I didn't. I also managed to crush my thumb a little bit, but the gearbox is in. I had the engine running, as you guys just saw. I still need to connect the clutch mechanism where the pedal attaches to the shaft, and also attach the prop and various other little bits and pieces, but hopefully soon I'll be able to actually drive the van again. As always guys, thank you so much for watching my video. If you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up. I'm sorry that I don't upload particularly often, but I'm working on it, I'm trying.